Okay, in this tutorial, I'm going to continue to make and to convert this animation system into the Mecanim one. Sorry it took a while for me to create another tutorial, but hopefully I can continue this series 2D platform physics platformer. Okay, so the next step, first I have created a copy of our FBX Boxman, and then I'm going to use this one instead of the first one. So here I'm going to change first the animation into a humanoid. Then I'm going to click apply, and I'm going to configure the avatar definition first, but before I'm going to save the scene as another scene, so I have a backup of the old one, and then I'm going to change this to a physics mecha. So here I'm going to click configure, then I want to make sure if the bones is already correctly assigned. Each bone you can check by clicking the muscles and then by sliding the sliders. Maybe yeah, it's correct, so we can go back to our scene. And here for the new character, we have to assign the clips, the animation clips. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take our previous character and see the values. Okay, for idle is from the first frame 0 to frame 30. I'm going to check loop time and loop pose. Also I'm going to bake the root transform rotation. So this is all the animation that I've set up. And for the idle, I'm gonna check loop time, loop pose, root transform rotation, and root transform Y position. And for run also the same. For jumping, I'm going to uncheck the loop setting and leave the transform rotation position. And for fall, I'm also gonna do the same like the jump animation. And for edge hanging, I'm going to loop the animation but leave the transform rotation and position. And for climbing, I'm going to uncheck the loop, but I'm going to keep root transform rotation. Okay, just gonna hit apply and we can use that. So now I'm going to add the second Boxman character. Oh, before I'm going to change the scale first. It should be 0.02, so I'm going to change that. And then I'm going to see the position. Okay, I'm going to copy this value and then paste it to our second Boxman, the one that used Mecanim. And here I'm going to delete the old one. So we're going to use this, and I'm going to rename this to Boxman Mecanim. Okay, I think we are done so far. Then I'm going to uncheck the apply root motion. Okay, so the next steps, first I'm going to create a animation controller. So I'm going to delete this over first, and I'm going to create a new controller. So okay, Animator controller, and I'm going to name that Boxman Mecanim. Here under the animator, I'm going to use that controller that we've just created before. Sorry, the screen is here. Okay, and then I'm going to choose that exact and from the project folder I'm going to add all of the animation to our animator. So I'm going to drag the window here, and then I'm going to drag all the animation here. Okay, and then I'm going to make the layout like this for volume. Okay, so right now I'm going to set up the run animation and jump animation first. Okay, I'm going to create a float, and I'm going to call this float x speed for the horizontal speed. Then I'm going to add a trigger, and I'm going to call this trigger jumped. And then I'm going to add another trigger, I'm going to call this trigger, I think I'm going to delete that. I'm going to add another boolean, grounded. Okay, I think this is enough for a while. And then for the idle, I'm going to create a transition to run, and for this to running I'm going to create the condition that using the x speed that we just created before, and from idle to run the value of the x speed needs to be greater than 0.1. and then I'm going to create a transition from run to idle, and this transition I'm going to change it, the x speed value, to less than 0.1. Okay, so right now we need to set the animation first. So for the character I'm going to remove this FSM for animation because we are not gonna use that anymore. Minimize all, and then I'm going to delete this remove component. So I'm going to create a new FSM, and this FSM I'm going to name it Mecanim animation. Okay, so for the first state I'm going to set this state as the idle state and run, and I'm going to create a couple event for idle and run, and for jumping, and also for landing. Oh, we already have landing, so it's okay. I'm going to just create it, and in case with yours not checked yet, just check the landing and jumping event so we can access that globally. Okay, for idle and running I'm going to create a, before I'm going to retrieve the velocity of the character. So here I'm going to create a new float called character velocity x, and set the type as a float, and under the state I'm going to get the velocity value using get velocity action, and here I'm going to feed the x value to the float that we have just created and check every time. Okay, and then I'm going to the Mecanim animation back, and here I'm going to create a same float value car vel x, and then I'm going to add a get FSM variables. Here I'm going to drag that action, and I'm going to get the value from Mecanim, sorry, not from Mecanim animation but from movement, and I'm going to retrieve the character vel x, and this will automatically feed the value to the variable that with the same name. So make sure that the names are exactly the same, and then check every frame. And I'm going to need to change the value because the car velocity x, it can be positive and it can be also negative value. So I'm going to make sure that the value stay positive using absolute. So here float abs, and then I'm going to change the value to positive and check every frame. And then from here I'm going to set an animator float to a positive value. So I'm going to type the parameter x speed and then get the value from the character velocity x and then change that every frame. But before we can use this, we have to specify the game object. So I'm going to create another variable called Mecanim character, and then I'm going to change this type to game object, and then I'm going to put the Boxman Mecanim into this game object slot here. So now I'm going to change this, specify game object, and then I'm going to use the variable options here, and then I'm going to choose Mecanim character. So I think this is set, and then I'm going to save the file first and let's see if it's working. Okay, there you can see it's working, but the running animation is a bit slow, so I'm going to change that. Okay, to change the animation speed is very easy. Just go to the animator and then choose the run motion here, the run state, and then I'm going to change the speed to 3. This is the value that I've already tried before and it works nicely, so I'm going to show you a bit. The animation it's working nicely, right? So I think I'm going to stick with the value of 3 for the speed of the run animation. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to create the jumping event. Okay, for jumping event I'm going to create another state, but before I'm going to add a global transition here and then set that to idle and run. Then I'm going to create another state, and then I'm going to name this as to jumping, and here I'm going to add a global transition jumping. Oh sorry, I need to delete that first, and then I'm going to add a global transition here. So for jumping I'm going to create to use a set animator trigger, and here I'm going to use the variable Mecanim character that we have created, and then I'm going to trigger the jump trigger. Okay, but before we can use this trigger, I'm going to set another transition for jumping. So here from any state I'm going to make a transition to jump. So what this means, we can go to jumping animation, we can transition to a jumping animation from any state, from idle, from run, or maybe from other animation. So I'm going to use this state, any state, and then click make transition to jump. And for the transition I'm going to use the jump trigger. So this is the only way to set it. And for jump I'm going to make a transition to fall, and here I'm going to make sure that, yeah, I think I'm going to let the conditions just like this, and then from fall I'm going to make a transition to idle and also to run, and from fall I'm going to use a grounded value to true, but I'm going to create another condition that also check the x speed less than 0.1. And for running I'm going to do the same, use grounded, but I'm going to add another condition that check whether the x speed is greater than 0.1. So I think this is set. We'll see if there's anything wrong with it. Okay, I'm going to back to the character, and then I'm going to create another state that check whether the character is already landed or not. Then I'm going to add a global transition, the one that I created before landing, and here I'm going to set animator bool, specify first the game object and change to Mecanim character, and the parameter I'm going to use is grounded, and set the value to true. And I'm going to copy this action, and then I'm going to paste this action, and then when jumping I'm going to set this to false. Okay, but before I will have to add a bit of additional action under the jumping event. So under anticipation, I'm going to send an event to our Mecanim animation FSM. So I'm going to use self and then game object FSM, and then I'm going to choose the FSM to Mecanim animation, and then I'm going to send the jumping event, and I'm going to copy the selected action, and here I need to paste the action when we are hitting the ground after jumping. Here we can see the flow from hit the ground we're going to on the ground. So here I'm going to change, this is already correct, but I'm going to change this to landing. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and on the Mecanim animation, after the character landed, I'm going to send this action back to the idle and run. So I'm going to use next frame event, go back to idle and run. So I think that's set, and let's see if it's working. It's working. As you can see, it's working nicely, right? So it's working nicely. As you can see, it's working nicely. And for the fall animation, for jump animation, I'm going to change the speed to 1.5. This is the value that I've searched before, and I think it fit nicely with the animation. And then the fall animation to 0.55. So I'm going to save that again, and then I'm going to test it again. Okay, it worked nicely. Okay, a quick detour. I've changed the transition value from jump to fall, the exit time to 0.68. I think this is suit the best transition. So we can see that the character is landing with the crouching animation. So okay, I'm going to continue where we left off, back to the Mecanim animation. Before this, set to another 2 state, and this one I'm going to add a global transition called hanging, and for climbing I'm going to add a global transition called climbing. So on edge I'm going to add a animator event, animator, and then I'm going to set the value of the trigger, animator trigger, set animator trigger, use the variable that we have defined, and then choose the, I'm going to create another trigger first, maybe on edge, and then another trigger for climbing. Okay, so for the on edge I'm going to use that on edge, and then I'm going to copy this action, paste it under climbing. So here under climbing I'm going to set this to climbing, with small lowercase c, climbing, and then I'm going to send next frame event to back idle and run. So I think this is all for our FSM Mecanim animation, and we need to change the edge climbing FSMs a bit. We are not going to need this anymore, so I'm going to delete this state, and I'm going to go here from exit edge. So here on the edge we have a send event, but I'm going to change this to the Mecanim animation, and then I'm going to choose hanging, and I'm going to check it first. This is okay, and here I'm going to send the event. I'm going to change the FSM name to Mecanim animation, and then I'm going to choose climbing, and here I'm going to check the animation duration for climbing. How long does the animation play? So I'm going to go back to the character and see the climbing animation. So it takes 1 minute 20 seconds. Okay, 1 minute 20 seconds. So that's about, yeah, 1 minute 20 seconds. So it's about 80 seconds. And if 80 seconds, so okay, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to add a wait action for 1 minute 0.3 period, 1.333, and then I'm going to send to exit edge here. So I'm going to create a transition from any state to edge hanging, and then I'm going to check the on edge trigger, and from edge hanging I'm also to create a transition to edge climbing, and for this transition I'm going to use the climbing trigger. And for edge climbing I'm going to make a transition to idle and also to run, and this is simply using the exit time and set the value to 1, and here the exit time set to the value maybe 0.9. I'm going to change this one also to 0.9. Okay, so let's see if it's working. We can running nicely. We can also jump. We can also jump and continue running, and we can also jump to this. Okay, here we can jump to that. Okay, I think something's wrong with the animation. Okay, okay, I forgot one thing. So this is already correct, but here we have a root motion in this object but not on our parent character. So I've created a small script to compensate that, so we can translate the root motion from the climbing motion into our parent. So here is the script, and the script is very simple, and I'm going to post this under the description, the description under below the video. So I'm going to drag this, and then I'm going to put this onto box Mecanim, so we can see that we have the script here. And let's try it again if it's working. There you go. See, it's working right, but somehow it's gliding, so I'm going to need to fix the position. So here we will need to adjust the position of the edge trigger. Okay, we need to adjust the position of the trigger a bit, so I'm going to push this a bit outward and then going to move this a bit upward, and then also change the other trigger and move this a bit upward. So let's see if it's working nicely. One thing that I've changed is also this value. So here I'm going to make this, finish this into 0.1 and the max speed to 5, so it doesn't snap so quickly to the trigger, edge trigger position. Here, as you can see, it's quite nice. And actually you can fiddle with the position and the value of the animation. I think you can tweak it to your needs, but we need to create a fall animation and the jumping animation from edge hanging. So I'm going to go to the edge climbing here, and under jump pressed I'm going to copy this action, paste it, and then choose the Mecanim animation and choose jumping. For the fall animation I'm going to choose the Mecanim animation, but we have to create a trigger to the fall animation. So here I'm going to choose the Boxman Mecanim object and create a transition from hanging to falling. So here I'm going to make transition to fall, and for the transition I'm going to use another parameter, a trigger parameter. I'm going to call this fall. So for this condition I'm going to use fall, and then I'm going to go back to the character and I'm going to go to the Mecanim FSM and create another state for falling. So I'm going to move the landing state to the right side, and I'm going to create this new state, change this name to falling, and then I'm going to create a new event called falling. I'm going to use another name because I think this has already been used. So I'm going to choose file, and then I'm going to check the broadcast, and I'm going to add the global transition for file. For this falling I'm going to add a set animator trigger, and then I'm going to specify the game object as usual, and then I'm going to trigger the fall trigger here. So, and under the edge climbing I'm going to send this event to the file event. So let's see if it's already working. Okay, I'm going to jump here and then to fall. Okay, it's working nicely. Yeah, as you can see, it's working nicely. It's falling, and upon jumping it jumps also. So that concludes this converting to Mecanim system animation, and I hope this tutorial is helpful, and I'm going to show you in a bit how to change character easily with this Mecanim system. So to change the character I'm going to import a custom package. Then I'm going to go to my desktop. Here on Assessor, I'm going to import the 3D, the robot that Unity created. and here I'm going to import this. Okay, it's importing. I don't know why. Okay, it's done. And here I'm going to use that model and check the animation. Okay, I'm going to change this to humanoid first. Click apply, and before I'm going to save the scene, and then I'm going to check if it's already working. I'm going to check the muscle system. Okay, so it appears it only have one chest bone, and for the mapping, this is the hips root, and this is the hip. Okay, I think I'm going to use that first to see if it's working. So for the robot Kyle, I'm going to drag this to under character and see. Okay, and then I'm going to move this a bit downward, and also I'm going to change the scaling to, or maybe I'm going to change the import scaling to 0.7. hit apply. Okay, I think this fit nicely here. So okay, just move the feet so it aligns with our Boxman, and I'm going to hide the Boxman character. And for the Kyle, or robot Kyle, I'm going to change the runtime control using the Boxman that we have created. So we are going to use the same animator, and then I'm also going to apply the script that I've created, the animator move here. And then for the character object, I'm going to go to the Mecanim animation. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the Mecanim animation. Okay, I'm going to choose the character and go to the Mecanim animation and set this game object to our the other game object, robot Kyle, or maybe I'm going to drag this into this slot. So let's see if it's working. There, you can see it worked nicely, and the jumping animation, also the falling animation, and the climbing. Okay, oh sorry, I've hit the wrong key. It's climbing. Okay, so it's very easy to set up, to change the character with the Mecanim animation. So I really recommend that we change the animation to the Mecanim animation for ease of changing the character. Hopefully this tutorial is useful, and please, if there are any unclear part, just feel free ask in the comment and I will answer it ASAP. Thanks for watching.